Okay, let's start. Thank you for coming. We are very glad to have many visitors from Boston University, from Occupational Therapy Department, from Mechanical Engineering Department, represented by Ramon, and also people from our school, people from Pereira, Fundación Ariandina, and Universidad Tecnológica Pereira, the Center of Innovation and Research, and also visitors from Escuela Colombiana de Rehabilitación. Thank you very much for coming. So today we have wonderful speakers. We will start with Professor Karin Jacobs, which will talk about her experience in occupational therapy, which we are very interested in how we can transfer our development, our applications to real applications to get wider impact, not just focus on improved kinematics or movement or rehabilitations, instead of enable people to do things in daily life. So we are quite interested to start in this collaboration with Professor Karin Jacobs in the context of this project. After what we will have Professor Enrique Izaza from Pereira. He is one of the leaders of the Center of Innovation of Research in Pereira, which is a huge center of research that he will tell us many projects and many resources that they have for research, and we are also happy because they are inviting us to participate in collaboration with them, and we will look today how we can start to develop the agreement between our university and the Center of Innovation in Pereira. They have really good facilities for development, kinematic analysis, and many studies with cloud computing, many things that we are really interested to collaborate. And afterward, Professor Marcela will present our research here at the Department of Biomedical Engineering. And with those speakers, we want to inspire you to generate new ideas. And we will have, in the end of the meeting, if you took a look of the agenda, in the end we'll have some time for discussion. We want to put people to work groups to develop or think in real application that we can develop together. Not just the things that we will see today. If you have new ideas or necessities of people with disabilities, people with needs, special needs, we are open to discuss, and it will be in the end. So we have our speakers at the beginning. I think at the end we'll have the first break. Even you can take coffee as you want. We'll have coffee in the morning and more coffee in the afternoon. And after we'll have small short presentations of our students that they are involved in the collaboration. So we'll have students from engineering, from mechanical, from biomedical engineering, and from Boston University and our university. And also in the end we have wonderful presentation for the doctoral student, Professor Karin. They will present us their experience, which is really interesting, and also the work in the context of the project. So this project is focused on mobility. So this project is like the best moment of this project. I expect you enjoy and you get some interesting for you, because there are many interesting people and many clever people here with want to do things for people with disabilities. So I think that's all of the introduction. We will start with Professor Karin Jacobs. Thank you very much for coming, Professor. Let's start. You can go first. Yes.
Whatever I
finish. You can go forward with this and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. Can we thank Carlos and Marcela for putting this together? Hola. I think I have 4 words in Spanish, and I'll try using all of them today. This is my first time in Colombia. I hope it's not my last. It is just a beautiful place to be in. People are fabulous, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having our students here for the month, and I'm looking forward to collaboration. So I'm going to share some research that I have been doing collaboratively with 2 other universities, and I'll explain all of that to you. And I thought because you were university, many of you in the university, that you might enjoy learning about what we've done with university students. But I want to start off with, this is my view of Boston University. So my building is right here, and we're looking at Boston University. If you haven't been there, please join us. I live in one of the dormitories with all the students. 960 students and me. I feel very grateful. It's wonderful. So many of you may not know about occupational therapy, so I thought I'd start off with a very quick definition of occupational therapy. Before Lucy and Kim came here, had many of you heard the term occupational therapy as a profession? Who wasn't familiar with it, or who isn't still familiar? So it's a familiar healthcare profession for you, or no one wants to raise their hands? Okay. We work with people of all ages, and we help them do what's meaningful for them or to them. It's client-centered. The other profession that I'm involved in, I'm an occupational therapist, but I'm also a board-certified professional ergonomist, and I know that there's ergonomics here in Columbia, and I'm just going to sort of mesh those 2 in my talk, but as in my career, my identity is both. It's probably occupational therapy first, and then an ergonomist there as well. So I want you to close your eyes after you look at this cute picture. These are my grandchildren. Yes, I am a grandmother. One of my most meaningful roles. So I want you to think about, what is a meaningful occupation for you? What's really important for you? And what's your favorite role? So close your eyes for a second and think about that. You've got to close your eyes because I want you to envision that, okay? Okay, open your eyes to a new reality. You have been in a car accident, and you are in the hospital, and you have a traumatic brain injury. Your favorite occupation may not be something you're able to do the same way, and how you address your role may change as well. We never know when a traumatic brain injury is going to happen. I went online looking at pictures of videos here in Bogotá. These were some that I was going to show from another country, and I said, I don't want to set this off with too much drama. But a traumatic brain injury can happen anywhere. So I'm going to just talk about the objectives first. What I want to do is to describe the impact of traumatic brain injury. It can happen to any of us, any family member, any friends. It's something that is all over the world. I'm going to talk about Project Career, which is a model that we've worked on for 5 years. It works with people who have traumatic brain injury. It's typically college students. I'm going to talk about students who participated in Project Career, and also share some of our research findings with you. So let's start off with, what is a traumatic brain injury and the scope of the problem? So I actually went on to try to get some statistics about Colombia and read some articles. I can speak to that there's about 69 million traumatic brain injuries globally. In Colombia, the articles that I found just said common cause of death in Colombia. I couldn't find a statistic other than them saying that whatever it is, it's under-recorded. Okay, under-recorded. And that may be the case globally. I think this number is much, 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 much higher. It leads to disability and also death in Americans. Now we'll move on to America. About 2.8 million Americans every year receive treatment for TBI, traumatic brain injury. Now, treatment, I'd like to highlight, because many people don't go and seek treatment. So they're playing soccer, and they hit a ball, and all of a sudden they feel really dizzy and maybe they ask the coach to sit out for a little bit. They may have had a concussion. And a concussion is the beginning of that continuum of traumatic brain injury. Okay? I won't have you raise your hand, but I have a feeling many of you might have experienced something like that. Bumping your head when, getting out of a car. I had a student once who was sitting on a plane and someone quickly turned and her backpack hit her in the back and in her head, and she had a concussion. Okay, so we never know when it might happen. We also see, a 50% increase, particularly in sports and recreational ones. You hear a lot about football players in the United States. We have people coming back from the theater, from some of the conflict that's happening with our soldiers, and we're seeing a lot of it. But if we look at the cost to society, it's quite high. And again, this is US dollars. But what is a traumatic brain injury in general? It's non-degenerative. It can lead to temporary or permanent cognitive, physical, sensory, and psychosocial challenges. And I like using the word challenges. So someone may get diagnosed with a mild traumatic brain injury or even a concussion, and they'll say, oh, I'll sit out playing football for a while or soccer for a while, and then maybe a year later, symptoms start coming back. So you could be diagnosed with a concussion, or at the end of the spectrum, a really severe traumatic brain injury, and what exacerbates it over time, people don't know, and so it can actually be part of your whole life. And that's kind of scary, I think. And I think that's why it's really important to address this. So here are some common effects of, and I thought you'd find it interesting to look at the brain and see where all of these things are happening. The frontal lobe, you can see that concentration and speech and motor, and even smell can be affected. We've had one person who couldn't come into a room if someone was wearing perfume, or aftershave lotion, or even a deodorant that had a smell to it. Breathing, body awareness, taste, touch, these are all things that we see can be affected. So now I want to look at college students in the United States, and then you might want to share, in Bogotá or in Colombia in general. We see about 80% reporting problems, and a lot of it has to do with the cognitive demands in school. Like where you're sitting right now, this may be hard for someone who is having a hard time concentrating. They want to go back to school, that's really important, but they can't concentrate. So there's a lot going on here. But what we find, interestingly enough, in the United States, and I think it's probably here in your universities too, that there's disability services for students. Is that familiar to you? Is there disability services? No, Marcella's saying maybe not. In the US, there should be disability services available to students. Many students don't seek that out. And sometimes it's because they don't want to disclose that they've had a concussion. We had a student once who was going into the police force and would not participate coming into our laboratory, our research lab where Project Career was held. And this person said, I'll meet you at the ice cream place or Starbucks. I just don't want anybody to see that or know that I had a concussion, because they might tag me as not being someone who could be a police officer. So there's a lot of stigma associated with having a traumatic brain injury. So employment is an issue. So we've got people coming through school, but what about employment? We see lower grades and higher dropout in schools, but also dropout in employment for people as well. Someone with a traumatic brain injury, about 30% or so of them are employed after the first year of employment. So it doesn't look good for them unless they get some kind of services. And there are services, and the services that are available can have a significant impact on someone. We found that someone who had job placement services, so what that would mean is that someone would say, Kim, you know, I'm going to work with you until you get a job, and maybe I'll coach you on the job as well. That helps someone maintain their jobs. So I want to share Project Career. I'm very proud to have been the PI of Project Career at Boston University. It was a joint venture with Kent State University. The grant was actually submitted through Kent State. They have a very robust disability service program there. And it was with West Virginia University. And we had collaborations of JBS International for the evaluation and dissemination. One of the reasons I think this group of people coming together really helped make it successful is that we were from many different disciplines. I was the only occupational therapist. We had people in rehab counseling, vocational counseling, education, and we all came together and looked at it in a different way. One of the people who helped put this all together was the former commissioner of mental health in Massachusetts, and she was the brain behind pulling all of these people together. I want to stop for a second. Am I speaking too fast?
No.
Okay? Okay, great.
It's okay.
It's really funny. When I start talking, my New Yorker comes out in me. I was born in Brooklyn, and all of a sudden it's like, speak as fast as you can. I'll put my Bostonian hat on. So we were all together. The grant concluded in September 2018. I had a no-cost extension, so we ran the grant, and in fact, we're still seeing some of the clients. We have some no-cost extensions, so that was very exciting. So I want to tell you a little bit more about Project Career, because I'm very proud of it. Interprofessional, which I mentioned, 5 years. Our grant, when we put the proposal in, we said we'd cover 150 students in the different schools, 50 in each of them. So I mentioned Boston University as being our site, but my technology employment coordinator, who I want to give a shout out to, Amanda Nardone, who just became an occupational therapist, which is exciting. Mandy went to 21 schools in the greater Boston area. So it wasn't just Boston University or the other ones. A couple of the technology employment coordinators went to other schools too, but she went to 21 different schools, which I felt was pretty amazing. And the intervention consists of using an assessment tool that might be interesting for you. It's called the Matching Person Technology Assessment. It assesses someone's interest and ability to use technology. So that may be something, and in fact, I believe that it's being translated in Brazil in Portuguese. It might be something that you might want to be in touch, and I can have you be in touch with the woman who created it. She was part of our grant too, to see if it could be translated into Spanish. I think it could be very useful. So let me keep going, and I do want to give one more shout out to the people, because we're a team. As I'm sure you see in your lab, we all work together, and it's always important to acknowledge everybody. Phil Rumrell is the team leader. He's a good friend. He's on the editorial board of my journal work, and I'll talk about that later. We call her, Deb Minton is his assistant. Then myself, Amanda Nardone. Deb Hendricks, we call her DJ. She started something in the United States called the Job Accommodation Network at West Virginia University. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Elaine, Eileen, and Anne, a big team. But here's our little Boston team. I wanted you to see a picture of us here. And there's Amanda. You can tell who did the selfie, right? It's always the person who's largest. So I want to go over the whole system of Project Career, because I think it's a model that you might find interesting to implement because it was so successful. So we had a recruit, and one of the things that made it challenging for Boston University is that we didn't have any disability service program set up in our college. Our university had disability service for students, but we didn't have anything happening at our college for students with traumatic brain injury. So we had to start from scratch. And if I told you we started from scratch, I wouldn't be exaggerating. I called up every person I knew who was working with someone with a traumatic brain injury, and it had to be someone who was an undergrad. And an undergrad in either a 2-year program or a 4-year program. And in retrospect, I think we made a little mistake with our inclusion criteria. We probably should have added graduate students, because many graduate students approached us and said, can I come into project career? And we had to say no, because they were not part of the inclusion of the project. So we went out everywhere, and I didn't say to contact your friends, but we did. We contacted a lot of people to get the population. I mentioned the technology and technology assessment. The matching person and technology assessment has reliability, validity. It's been used extensively. And what it did for us, it helped us individualize what each of the students was capable of doing with assistive technology, You know, did they like to use technology? Were they frightened of technology? And you might say, why did you even care? Because the main tool that we gave the students to help them with whatever challenges they were having in school was an iPad and apps. So that's where all the technology comes in. We identified changes in function that might need adaptation. We came up with a baseline, and perception was really important. So here we go. Everyone received an iPad. But an iPad is nothing without knowing what apps can be used. How many of you use an iPad or some kind of tablet? Anybody here? A few people? It's very, very popular in what we found in many of the universities that our students who participate in Project Career used. And why do you think we picked an iPad? What do you think it did for someone sitting in the classroom? It made it be a level playing field, because Kim could have one set up, and Lucy could have one set up, and Shannon could have one set up, and no one would ever know that they were in Project Career or using an app that's helping them understand what the professor was saying. So it really leveled their ability to be successful in school. So we then came up with what apps would be helpful. Spent a lot of time on apps. How many of you have apps on your phones? How many of you have smartphones? We all have, every phone is smart, right? I don't know if we're going to call any phone anything else. But apps are great, right? But they come and go all the time. So we identified some academic, and I'll share all of this with you. You can all have my whole presentation if you'd like. We came up with apps over time that were helpful for students in note-taking. I'm going to show a few of these to you. If you are taking a course or are having a hard time understanding someone presenting, you've got to get this app, Notability, and I'll show you in a few minutes. For study support, maybe you need to take a quiz, or you're studying for a major exam. Quizlet helps you with coming up with exam questions. Khan Academy, many of us have heard about. Lots of courses that are free. And then Voice Dream Reader. I'll explain those in a little bit. And then organization. Most of the smartphones have native calendars on them, but we found that some of these were even more helpful for our students. And then behavior and health. Many of the students in Project Career are very stressed out. You know, how am I going to pay my loans? How am I going to pay for my apartment? I can't maintain a job while I'm in school. It's too much for me. So Yoga Studio was one of the things that we did a lot. Meditation studio as well. Breathe to relax. It's fabulous. Games. I have to say, I'm not going to show it to you, but I can show it and tell you how to get it. Let's Create Pottery became the most popular app for stress reduction. If you load it to your phone, it lets you build pottery, like clay. And people were, this was, became a meaningful occupation to many of our students. And we were shocked. So I want to show you Notability. This app could be helpful for all of you. It's note-taking, so if you can picture this, you're sitting where you are here, and you have permission from your professor to videotape the lecture, so you're getting the audio on it. You're taking notes while this is going on, and then it's saving it for you. So it's recording the lecture, it's syncing the recording and the note-taking at the same time. And this gives you another example of what you could do with Notability. So you can put a document that you're reading, you can highlight it, and then it will go into your files. You can record on it too. Notability does cost some money. When we first started out, I think we got Notability for free for all of our students. Each student gets $25 worth of apps each year as well, and then they get to keep the iPad. So Notability is a must if this is something that may be challenging to you. Voice Dream Reader is fabulous. It's text-to-speech app, so it's going to read it to you. You might highlight it and then it will define the word for you as well. You can have books read to you, many different formats, and what I think is really helpful, say you're trying to learn or read something in a language that you're not as familiar with, you can adjust the words per minute so that you can just hear it at a slower pace. Any of these sound good to you? They're fabulous, they really are. I think they're helpful. My Homework helps you keep your schedule. How many of you have challenges with staying organized and time management? I see smiley faces, you don't have to raise your hands. This is really great. My Homework really helps track things. And it syncs with calendars as well. So that's another one to think of. And then this one we had to use many times with our students because many of the programs they use required passwords. How many of you can remember your password? I have to change it multiple times because I forget it. That was the biggest issue for our students. So OneSafe keeps track of all of their passwords, which is really important. Let's look at Meditation Studio. If we had time, I'd have you do a meditation. I might have you do a yoga pose in a moment, though. This is really great. And I had someone who's an expert on meditation look at this and they said, this is pretty accurate. And again, it's on your phone. Maybe you're stressed out and you have 15 minutes before a major exam. We would have the student add that to their calendar as something they need to do before going into an exam. Okay, everybody stand up. All right, we're going to do a yoga pose. Actually, I'm going to have you do something fun. Do we have enough room? I know what I want to do. Do you have enough room? Yeah? Think we do? Okay, let's do this. Let's have 2 lines. Step out. Let's have 2 lines. Come up here, get 2 lines. Up here, get 2 lines. Okay, you have to have a line. So people have to be behind each other. All right, come on out. Everybody's making it. Up here, you have to up. 2 lines. Can you squeeze people 2 lines? Yeah. This is good. When do you ever get a break in the lecture, right? This is the application of ergonomics. Almost everybody's ready. Close your eyes so you don't. All right, everybody, here we go. Arms up. If you're able to balance yourself, go on your toes. And now drop your hands on the shoulders in front of you and give them a massage. Okay. So, no, I'm coming over. I don't know if I can squeeze in. All right, turn around. Give everybody else a massage. Turn around. Okay, this is called a micropause. This is the integration of ergonomics into lecture. But this is also helping you see the application of a different kind of yoga kind of pose. You do need another person in there with you. All right, feel good? Yes. Okay, let's sit down. Thank you. And then finally, Trello is great for making lists. You can set deadlines for yourself, and Trello is something that we found really made a difference with students, and what was cool about it is that you could chat and message each other as well. So Mandy Nardone might be working with a client saying, hey, how are you doing with staying organized? And then send out a little chat and get a response back. So these are all set, and I'll leave this whole, actually this presentation is on Carlos's computer, so everybody can have the thing on it. So case management was a really important aspect of Project Career. I keep mentioning Mandy Nardone's name over and over again. Having good case managers are important. So Deb and Eileen were the case manager at the other facilities. Those are what we call technology and employment coordinators. And they could speak to them face-to-face, electronically. We did use FaceTime. We did not use Skype after the first year because it really wasn't confidential. They would help and change the apps that people were using and identify any other needs. And I'll give you an example. One person became homeless during their time in project career. Mandy worked with someone to help this person get a home to live in. Another person had to go to court, and she went to court with them. So it went beyond just what Project Career was doing to help them finish school and then get a job. It really was supporting them over life. Mentors. What we did was, and we asked students if they wanted this, a student might say, I want to become an engineer. And we actually had a few students that wanted to be engineers. We would get a mentor for them. So they would be in Project Career, and then we would find someone who would meet with them on a fairly regular basis to talk about engineering as a career. I am a mentor for someone. I've been working with this person now for over 2 years, and I'm very happy to say he successfully finished school. He graduated, he passed an exam, and now is working. So the mentorship model really made a difference because it then brought things home to someone. It wasn't just looking at taking classes, but when I graduate, what do I have as an option? It's pretty exciting. And then we had periodic reassessments and evaluations. So people would come in, and 6 months, so anyone could start the program as a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, or senior. People could start at any point in time. And again, for some students who still needed project career support, we're still working with those students. And some other services that I think I mentioned already, some accommodations, what do you need on the job to be successful, any other services, I mentioned housing, counseling, tutoring, again, and then continuous individual support. And then graduation and beyond, resume writing, interviewing, all of that were important. So let me tell you about some of the results that we had. Project Career, the majority of students were Caucasian. This was something we could not figure out. Particularly at Boston University, our site, we were at 21 different schools. And yet, people who disclosed that they were Caucasian, white, participated, but very few minorities. And we reached out to many minorities, and one group of minorities said to us, it's not within our culture. It's not within our culture to participate in something like this. We figure it out on our own. So that was very striking to us, and we, over the 5 years, couldn't figure out how to solve it. You see that people full-time and part-time, 2-year colleges, 4 years. In our 2-year colleges is where we saw most of our minorities in the whole project. The grade point average, and this is out of a 4.0 in the United States. When they started, the average was 2.47 out of 4.0. Look at what it was when they graduated, 3.03, which is really exciting. We didn't have students tested for what type of traumatic brain injury they had originally. I think that was a flaw in the study. I think next time we do something like Project Career, we probably need to have the official doctor's documentation, because for some students it was hard to remember, and some students would say, well, at the time, I think the doctor said it was. But from what we got, about 23% said that they had a mild, and then you can see that moderate, 31, and then severe, and then some would say unknown. We wanted to get a sense of the iPad and the apps, and this is what people were sharing with us about using that the apps in general improved their quality of life, It helped them perform academically. It enhanced their comfort, particularly psychosocial comfort with being around other people. Enhanced their well-being. And there was a significant difference in baseline and follow-up, that it was a positive experience for people who might have started off and said, I hate technology. And I want to give you an example of a student who had a severe traumatic brain injury from being beat up. And he was one of the first people who came in. He could not even navigate using his hand on the iPad. And we went and got a lot of different assistive technology for him. He threw his iPad across the room one time because he was so frustrated. He took a break for a while, came back in, and we were able to, with patience, have this young man use adaptations to be able to use the iPad, and he successfully finished school. So a lot of hand-holding, but it was worth it. 56 of our 150 students graduated. That's really great when you go back and look at the statistics about people graduating with a traumatic brain injury. 14 are continuing their education. I know maybe some of the ones were interested in engineering and others. 29 are full-time employed, 14 are part-time, and we are really proud that 100% people said that they felt more productive and they felt that their life was much more meaningful after they had finished school, which I think is great. And here's a couple of narratives. I'm going to let you read this that people shared with us. And again, I'm just sharing ones from Boston University. Now, I don't think we have time because I think mine's supposed to end at 9:30. But what I was going to have people do is a case study, but I wanted you to see this case study for a moment. Do we have time? We don't have time, do we? We have time? Ooh. Okay. I want you to look at this case study, and maybe you could talk to people at your table, all right? Do you want to hand out? There's one sheet that we have.
This is the one.
That's the case. Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. And
I
then,
have like 3
okay.
copies of that.
Okay, and I think I have some too. What I want you to do is to look at the case study and think about what kind of app you think would help the person. Now, you only have a short list of apps. I actually brought a longer list for you to look at. So maybe we could have people work together, and I've got an app list. We'll just take 5 minutes to look at this and see. The case study is up, so I think you'll be fine with the case study, but the app list is the key for you. Here we go. You're welcome. And here actually, she's in here. Just look for an Alexa. If you look here, I've got some Alexa in here. Just turn the page. I have a lot of them. You're welcome. Oh, great. Yeah, do some more. And here's the, so those are apps. And if you could, you got an app list. Do we have any more for the Alexa?
Yes.
2, okay. I gave you one for Alexa, and here's Alexa. Who does have Alexa as a case study? Here you go. So what I'd like you to do is look at Alexa, and we can do this together. What do you think is happening with her? Where are some issues with Alexa? This is not Alexa that you say, Alexa, tell me the weather. What's happening? She has what? Poor memory. Okay. She's easily distracted. What else?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. What about that?
Creeping when she takes some exams.
And she gets very tired, right? I actually picked Alexa because I know horseback riding is very popular here. And people fall off horses and get a concussion or, even worse. So take a look. Don't worry about Disney. I thought you'd appreciate it if she wants to work at Disney. This is a case study that we use in Project Career when we're doing workshops. Take a look at the list of apps that I gave you, or think back of the ones that I had before. And I'll put them up here for a moment. And what apps do you think Alexa would benefit from. I'm going to go to the ones that just have the whole list. Okay, what do you think? If we're looking, does she need note-taking, study support, organization? What do you think? So she needs study support, oh, I'm sorry, study support. So what do you think of voice dream reader? Do you think that would be helpful for her?
She gets easily distracted.
Yeah. So I think voice dream reader might be very good for her. I think that might be, because she could have it play over and over again so she gets distracted. When you get distracted, what strategy do you use to get you back focused? Well, maybe some of our organizational apps might help. Maybe what we do is Trello or Be Focused, and that might, we could have it programmed so that she can take a break after maybe 15 minutes for 10 minutes and come back again. And that strategy of working for 15, 20 minutes, even a half hour, taking a 10-minute break and then coming back again is something that is really helpful. Now, we talked about anxiety, right? What do you think might be good for her to address some of her anxiety?
Yoga.
Meditation studio.
Okay. Meditation studio.
Breathe to relax.
Maybe yoga would be good too. Calm is great. These are all, and Headspace is wonderful too. Maybe she can do some pottery. You have to try it. You will like it. I have to say, it's surprisingly very calming. Someone will have to load it up. So anything else that we want to do for Alexa? What do you think the project, I'm going to go, close your eyes, I'm going to go fast. The project career, here we go. Project career could do with her. She's got an issue with time test. So you're in a program and the professor says your final is going to be 2 hours. What could the Technology and Employment Coordinator do to help her? They might tell her to go to Disability Services and disclose that she is a person qualified with a disability and see if she can get extra time for taking the test. And that's a very appropriate accommodation that we would see for students. Anything else in here? So this is obviously, we changed the name, but this is a real case study of someone who was in project. All right, we're going to continue because I don't want to go over time. So one of the outcomes of Project Career was to put up a portal that is available for any of you who'd like to go to the portal. There is the link. I do have a little magnet if anybody wants to grab it. So Project Career portal, you can have different audiences. So a student goes on, a veteran, an educator, service provider, employer. They can get information. We have information on apps, on webcasts, and then you can look at different accommodations. Remember I mentioned DJ at the beginning who started the Job Accommodation Network? Our portal is connected to that Job Accommodation Network. So it's constantly being updated with accommodations that people can use. And I do want to say for what you are all doing in helping people to be able to live life to its fullest as engineers, that resource would be great because we can't always know what assistive technology is out there or what assistive technology is missing that's out there, which is what you want to do. You want to create something. So the job accommodation is free, and I highly recommend that you go to askjan.org, and you can get there on our portal as well. What happened throughout all of this, remember I mentioned we had an inclusion criteria? Well, people started contacting us saying, I'm 60 years old, I graduated school a long time ago, there's no support for me, can't you have me join? Or I'm a graduate student, or I dropped out of school, and I have a traumatic brain injury, and I really need support. So what Mandy started was a support group that's been going now for almost 4 years. They meet monthly at Boston University, and they do all sorts of things. This was, what do you think this was? Paint night. Do you have paint night here? No. This is very popular in the United States, paint night. This is my apartment, because you get to see the view. There I am. And we did cooking at my apartment. And you can see many of them are older people. This support group actually became Mandy's thesis project for her occupational therapy program. Really exciting. Another thing that we did was we published a special issue of the journal Work on Traumatic Brain Injury. This is a journal I started in 1990. It's 30 years old. It's interprofessional, interdisciplinary with an impact factor. And I want to challenge all of you as you're working on your projects to submit your articles to work. We're a very user, author-friendly journal. And we don't use a portal online. Everything you submit directly to us, which is kind of cool. So we are having a special issue on robotics and work. So that might fit beautifully to many things that you're doing, and I would encourage you to do that. We have a Learn at Work webinar that you could learn more about Project Career. And I'm very into podcasts. I actually have my own podcast. And so we interviewed people in Project Career on our podcast. So I'm going to conclude. Muchas gracias. I was so excited when we first came in. You had to stay there for a little bit so I could snap the picture over and over again. But it came out great. I love this art, and I'm hoping to get to see more in your beautiful city, and thank you. Can I answer any questions? And can you see any relevance with Project Career for your SAPs or the people that you work with? Can I answer any questions? Someone asks a question, I may have something to give you. I give away prizes.
I have a question. Did you study the possibility to develop special applications in order to obtain more results?
Yes, that would be, we hired somebody who didn't produce the app, and we gave them some money, and it was a very bad story. She did not produce an app that we created. So would love someone who would want to create an app that would be specialized for the Project Career. It wasn't written into our grant. We got some extra money, and the woman just didn't produce it. Thank you. Is that something you want to do? Guess what he gets? Guess what he gets?
We could be a developed app.
You get the special issue of Work devoted to
traumatic
brain injury. Any other questions? I have one more giveaway that's very different. Don't be shy. I saw people taking lots of pictures. Were there apps that you can see using for yourself or people that you work with?
We use Trello at the lab.
You use Trello. Great. You all stay organized?
We try.
We try.
But we have help with some bars.
Yeah, Trello's great. You got those prize already, so you can't have it. Come on, one more person. One more person. No, don't be shy. Okay, thank you all very much.
Now let's continue with Professor Pereira.
for this opportunity to share our work. This is my mate, Esteban.
My name is Steven Martinez.
My name is Enrique Izaza. I'm the Technical Chief Officer of the Center of Innovation and Technological Development in Pereira, the center of the Capiturian region in Colombia. We want to present our team. Our team is composed by Alejandro Gomez. He is an expert on biomechanics. Esteban Jaramillo, he's an expert in artificial intelligence. Mauricio Garcia, he's an expert in medical rehabilitation and sport training. Steven Martinez.
I'm still studying physical therapy. Also, sorry for my voice. A little bit sick. I'm doing
Only a
my
little
best.
bit.
A little bit. But I do my best.
Yes. My name is Enrique Izaza. I'm working with motion capture. We are using the technology of motion capture to physical assessment and to motion pattern recognition. Okay, let's go.
The role of MOCAN in rehabilitation is very important to us because it helps us to recovery and maintenance and prevention of ability or capacity the patient have used. So we try to recover those abilities and then we try to maintenance and prevention. For every any different functional disorder the patient have, and they make it bad food disorder of a quality life, have a bad quality of life. We try to do the retraining, reeducating, and readapting to do the patient can do the basic activities like the brush her teeth, take a shower, go to the supermarket by her own. Just we try to do to make it more independent. For the central role of the rehabilitation is very important because we try to reordinating by the physical movement. We try to do the benefits in connective process, sensory process, and motor process. Also, we need to first have a management of motor planning to do what we going to do with a different patient to do get some benefits in the different systems like skeletal muscle system, neurologic system, and cardiorespiratory systems. We also use different models of motor education like therapy exercise, movement reproductions, mirror therapy. If the patient needs assistance by device, we use external aid like biofeedback and exoskeletons.
Okay, thanks. We want to start talking about what is the approach of the project. Okay, a lot of research works are using the artificial intelligence to detect the movement of the parts of the body. Yes, all the process, all the power of the artificial intelligence are to detect, to reproduce the movement of the human body. But in this example, and this, we can see the machine recognizing from image the human body, the human structure, and the human postures. All the results of this project is motion capture. The result is motion capture. All the power of the machine is used to take the movements of the human body, and the result is motion capture. The structure of this project are from the human. You use conventional technology like cameras, cellular cameras, different kinds of cameras. You do a lot of work, computational work for image processing, and then you apply the artificial intelligence in order to obtain motion capture and motion recognition. our work is different because we use the motion capture technology and we apply some computational models, body models, biomechanical models, in order to obtain numerical data. We work with numerical data, and in this step of the process, the artificial intelligence is used to process numeric data. What is the result? With numeric data, all the power of the artificial intelligence is used to analyze the movements, to analyze the movement patterns, and we can do a lot of things with this application. For example, pattern recognition, pattern clustering, machine learning, how the machine learns to how the people is moving around a specific pattern, around a specific disease. Deep learning, neural networks, expert systems, diagnosis assistants. And we can do advanced data analytics in order to obtain more information, in order to obtain more analyze, more quality in our knowledge about the movement. This is an example. I don't know, I need to. Okay. This is an example of what we can obtain from a motion capture system. This is our computational presentation of half body. With the motion capture, we obtain all the kinematic data, and we can use other technologies like electromyography to combine all the kinematic data with all the muscular signals, electrical signals. We can combine all this information, numerical information, and give to the machine all the spectral of the data in order to improve the analysis. The motion capture approach starts with a marker structure. We need to develop a marker structure in order to design a model, a biomechanical model, based on the position of the markers. What is the difference between this model and the human body? With the markers, we need to design a biomechanical structure. The position of the markers the position of the marker is not the same position of the joints of the body. Then we need to do some calculations to model the joints, to model all the human body in order to obtain numerical data for the process. We have two approaches to obtain this numerical data. One is anthropometric approach. The anthropometric approach uses some statistical calculation and some approximations. For example, the hip joints are modeled like a perfect sphere. It's good for a specific modeling, but the hip joint is not a perfect sphere. Then we need to use a functional calibration. The functional calibration uses the movement of the subject, the movement of the patient, to find the specific center of rotation. Every movement, the joint of the hip is not a perfect sphere. Then the joint of the knee is not a perfect cylinder. Then every movement has a specific center of rotation. When you are analyzing very complex movement patterns, you need to take care with this approximation because the data can be different. Okay. The pros and cons about motion capture. The pros. From the system you obtain numerical results. With these numerical results, you can use these results with another information to process, to use the machine to process all this information and give you more analysis, more information, more quality for the analysis. You have an standard models and data. It is very good because a lot of researchers in all the world are using this technology. You can share your results. You can use the result of other researchers to give more value to your work. You use less computing power. You need less computing power processing numbers than the power you need to process image. Then this difference gives you the opportunity to run more iteration, to give you the opportunity to run more power and do more analysis. And it's very easy to use. Motion capture, the process of motion capture is very easy to use. It's very different from all the technology you need to process image from video, for example. What are the cons? First, the cost. The motion capture systems are expensive. Then, place restriction. You can use a camera in every place, but not all the motion capture systems are not suitable for all the places. You need a specific places with light, with controlled light conditions to do motion capture. Another con is you don't use image-based methods. You are not processing image. You are detecting objects in space. Then the result is not video. It's not image that could be used with other technologies. The hardware and the software are restricted. What does it mean? It's not like other technologies that you can develop your own software, your own hardware. You need to work with a specific hardware and proprietary hardware and software, and it has some restrictions. And the final con is the humans are not like lobsters. Okay, we have skin, and you put the markers over the skin. What does it mean? You could have relative movement between the skin and the bones, and it could be deliver some noise to the machine. Okay. Then we will talk about the artificial intelligence for the recognition and physical assessment. Okay, this is our first challenge. She's a dancer, Colombian dancer, and this is a motion capture of cumbia, a native rhythm from Colombia. It's a very complex, very complex motion pattern. When we are studying this motion pattern, a lot of questions arose about it. First, can we characterize dancing movements? It's possible for the machine to evaluate percentage of rhythms in a dancing pattern. Can we train the machine for evaluate the progress in the dancing learning? Can the machine determine the experience of a dancer using the motion pattern? Can we predict the evolution of the percentage of improvement in a dancer? All these questions give to us, or we find the need to select a technological alternative, and this technological alternative is the artificial intelligence. We'll start with the structure of the human body and all the kinematic data, the kinematic behavior. Position, velocity, acceleration, angular position, angular velocity. It's a lot of information. Then we was trying to find properties and characteristics in order to establish relationships between all the members in a specific motion patterns. Our hypothesis, our first hypothesis is if we can characterize and recognize dense movements, we can characterize and recognize every movement we want, but this is not easy. Then we start to work with gait, with walking patterns. We use, in first step, descriptive methods. All our descriptive methods use the labeled data. We are sending to the machine labeled data with, okay, this is a good pattern, this is not good pattern, this is a pattern with a specific disease, this is a pattern with a device helping walking device like a walking stick. Okay. We use specific techniques like k-means and Bayesian classifiers in order to obtain statistical distributions and a percentage scale. In the first step, the machine says, okay, the patient, the subject, has 50% of the functionality, 70% of the functionality. This is good, but it's not enough information because we can evaluate the patient, but the machine has not signed to us what we could do with the patient. What is the best alternative for the patient? What is the best alternative for the therapy? What is the best alternative for the assistive devices? Then we're starting to work with a different approach. This is a multidimensional index evaluation. We use a lot of dimensions, and we try to ubicate the patient, put the patient in a field, and every subject is ubicated in the space of this n-dimensional system. Okay. The position in the n-dimensional space of the every subject is scaled in order to calculate an index. This index gives you a comparative scale of every patient. Then, when you use this index, the next step is a predictive analysis about what we can do with the patient. Then we start to use deep learning techniques. What happened with these deep learning techniques? All the data is not totally labeled, it's partially labeled. What does it mean? It means that we're trying for the machine to start the machine recognition. The deep learning techniques works like a black box schema. What does it mean? We don't know exactly what the machine is doing, but the capabilities of the prediction of the machines are very good. Okay? All this data is sent to the deep learning system, and the system starts to recognize relationship between patterns. With these relationships, the system starts a prediction about the behavior when you change a specific component of a specific pattern. For example, the machine starts to predict the behavior of walking motion pattern of a person that needs a walking stick. With the walking stick, we can decide if this is the best alternative for the patient, or we need to explore other alternatives. In this moment, the system is not perfect, but we are finding improvement for the system in order to obtain better results. This is a comparison between two patients. Okay, this is the same patient. On the left, you have a patient without assistant device. On the right, you have a patient with assistant device. What gives you to the prediction? If you say the hip have a very specific movement in the left, this movement disappears in the right. What happened with this? Is the effect of the stick in the stabilization of the head. The pattern of the right is near to the normal gait pattern. Yes. It gives to us some idea, a predictive idea of what we could do with the patient. Okay? Some conclusions about this. First, the use of numerical data focuses the effort of the results from the objective, not in the tools to obtain movement patterns. We are working from the results to analyze and give more aid value. Then every technique of artificial intelligence has different kinds of results. However, the most important thing is what do you want to obtain from the model? What do you want to obtain in order to give a evaluation or prediction about the patient? And then the use of artificial intelligence facilitates the decision-making process. However, the criterion of the third is essential in this part. It's essential in two steps. First, to build the model, you need an expert to give the criteria to train the machine. Without experts, it's impossible to train in a right way the machine. Then you need the criteria of the expert to interpretation of the results. Without the expert, you can't interpret in a right way the results of the model. Thanks. If you have some question about the process.
When you're creating the model, are you using like multiple people to create the model? Because in terms of like the expert, there's obviously like variation, and there is like an average gait pattern across, and it probably differs based on a lot of different factors. So I'm just wondering, like, how are you choosing who is an expert, or are you building it off of multiple models?
Okay, we use a specific population of subjects.
Okay.
When a specific disease and a specific patterns. There was characterized by the expert previous to build the model. Then, with this data, we need to create an artificial data, combining the data of these models to give to the machine more information and to train the machine.
So like the more people you get, the better the model.
Yes.
Okay.
And the last step is when with a new subject, the machine compares the new information with the information base. What happened with this? You can have two kinds of results. First, evaluation with multidimensional index. The evaluation gives to us an idea of the rightness of the motion pattern of the patient, the new patient. And two, the prediction of the results of the specific alternative therapy technique in order to improve the performance, the results in the new patient. This is the principal structure of the right. Okay, thank you so much.
Hi, for those who don't know me, I am Marcela Moner. I'm a professor here in Biomedical Engineering. And I'm presenting this, in this presentation, part of the project that has this seminar with you today. And in general, all the research we do here in the Center for Biomechatronics. So this is a presentation from Professor Carlos Fuentes and myself. So the project that has us meeting us today is a bilateral US-Colombia network for research and education exchange. So the idea of these kind of projects that are funded by ICETEX and some organizations in the US, like Partners of the Americas, the idea is to improve the mobility of the students between the US and Colombia, that is not very high, and to improve it through educational projects. So the project that we proposed with Fundación Argentina from Pereira was affordable assistive technology for rural peace and development. As Carlos mentioned, so there is 4 parts in this project: Argentina, our school, and in Boston University there are 2 parts, Karen with occupational therapy and Professor Rebecca Korshett, that unfortunately is not here, with mechanical engineering program. So the idea of this project is to have a pilot study, a pilot research collaboration between the institutions, and to establish a research internship. So thanks to this research internship, we have some students from Boston University with us that have been here for 2 weeks now. I think this is the 3rd week. And some students that are going to the US to have also 1 month experience there. And the long-term objectives is so this is the pilot study, so is to search for a way to make this a long-term relationship between the institutions. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our center. We are trying to build here a center for research that is called the Center for Biomechatronics. We work with the students and professors for mechanical, electronical, and biomedical engineering. And in order to do this, we have several institutions from clinics and health institutions that we collaborate with. So we have some institutions here in Bogotá and some institutions outside of Colombia. We work with Hospital Nacional de Parapléjicos in Toledo, Spain, and I'm going to show some studies that we have there. And recently, some studies in India, and yeah, and the rest is in Bogotá. The way we work is when we started this center, the idea was to not sit in our lab and think, what problems do the healthcare people have? The idea was to go to the healthcare people and ask, what problems do they have? So we start every project by observation. We do questionnaires, or just students or ourselves go to the institutions and we observe what happens in the therapies. We observe really what is happening during the therapy in different kind of rehabilitation process, and we identify some opportunities that we can have there. And then we will develop a tool. Usually in the research projects we are having, this tool is usually a robot that we are going to show you some kind of the robots we are testing. But the idea is with the observations, we take what are the relevant parameters. It's not what we want to measure, it's what is important for the healthcare staff to measure and to know, and how can we improve the way they evaluate or they measure the progress of their patients. So we develop a tool, and then we analyze the effect that this tool can have. So the first and most easily way is just a usability test of the device, of robotic, of the tool we have. We have some students of short-term use to see what happened after a few sessions. We have particularly one study that we are doing a long-term validation. So this is the schematics of how we do all the projects we have. So all these projects are divided in 3 lines. The first one are robotics for physical assistance, are robots that are physically connected to the person and help them physically to assist a movement. In this line, we are particularly working with a gait assistant and patients with mobility impairments. So the first project, we work with children with cerebral palsy. This is in a hospital in Madrid. We have Conciencias project with, we are developing a platform that has a smart walker and an exoskeleton. And we are now we are working mainly in gait, but this can be exoskeletons for upper limb or other things in the future. And I'm going to show you a new project we have for the hand. The second line is robotics for cognitive support. There are these projects here. So we use humanoid robots that have some kind of communication with the patient and support them cognitively in different scenarios of rehabilitation. So in this case, we work with patients in cardiac rehabilitation, that a patient after a cardiac event has to follow some rehabilitation that is composed in part for physical exercise, and this has a high dropout rate. So here the idea is to increase the engagement of the people doing this rehabilitation process and make them more engaged with the process so they don't drop out, because dropping out of this kind of program has a high probability of a second episode, and second episode of cardiac diseases has like a 90% mortality rate. So it's a very important problem, and also is the main cause of death in our country. We work also with gait rehabilitation and with a cognitive support for a humanoid robot. In this kind of project, this was born out of the observation of the therapy. We were observing this kind of therapy with the robot Locomat that they have in 2 clinics here in Bogotá. And we were seeing that the therapist has to do a lot of things at once. She has to be able to correct the posture of the patient, because the patient has to be engaged and a good posture to improve the gait pattern. But also she's correcting the knee angle, the ankle angle. She's telling the patient how to do the game. She's organizing the parameters of the machine. She do a lot of things at a time. So we thought, okay, maybe if we help her with just one of the tasks, it will be a big improvement. So we developed this tool to help give feedback about the posture of the patient, and is the robot gives motivation, says to the patient, keep going, you're almost there, things like that, but also correct the posture. And just taking this only task, the therapist has a lot of more time for the other things that she has to be able to do. And finally, we have robotics for cognitive support in children with autism, where there is a lot of evidence in the literature that is something that is very useful. So in these 2 lines, we discovered that there is a lot of things that have been done in the world and in Europe and the US, but even there, they don't get to the patients. So here is like more difficult. So one of the lines we developed because of that was this line of affordable robotics for low and medium income countries. So in this line of affordable robotics, we have some projects. One was a project that we made with UCL in London and a university in Brazil last year that was developing hand prostheses with either recyclable or natural materials. And the idea was to develop tutorials so the people in rural areas of India, and this is applicable also to rural areas in Colombia, they can look at the video, get the materials, and build their own mechanical prostheses. And we are developing also robots that are more affordable and hard to break, and that they will need the maintenance that needs these other robots. And also we are developing robotic ortheses with 3D printing parts and lower cost. So to do all those projects, we need a lot of help, and this is a lot of partners we have in different countries. So we work with some universities in Brazil, Spain. We work with two companies in Medellin, that's Tejidos, Sueños and Prótesis Avanzadas. We work in this project with Boston University and some schools in France, and in London. So the context from most of these projects, or the most part, there is another projects that have a different context. But some part is, there is a challenge in society right now, and is the increasing of aging population. I remember when I get here to the school 3 years ago and have my first research meeting, Carlos said we need to work for aging people because we are all aging and we need to do something about it. And I found it very funny, but it's real. So it's more and more people that are in retirement ages and less people that are in working ages supporting this healthcare system. So one of the solutions that have been proposed is to use robotics to improve this quality of life that people will have when we have a lot more people in this condition. So the robotics can help in the workplace, and also it can help with the assistance of people that are aging. And also other of the problems or the reasons we work in this is the rehabilitation process. So sometimes after a brain injury or a spinal cord injury or a stroke, people have to start rehabilitation, and the earliest they start their rehabilitation, the most they can recover the function they have before the episode. So this is important because sometimes, due to some limitations in the healthcare system, people cannot access some kind of rehabilitation. So maybe with robotics we can improve the reach of this rehabilitation process in the population. So as I mentioned before, this is some of the pathologies we work with. So we are thinking about people with stroke and the rehabilitation process they have, with spinal cord injury, and also with traumatic brain injury. And these are patients that have been working with us here in different phases of the projects that we have. So one of the projects, as I mentioned before in the first line, is this project, that's Project Agora. It's a project funded by Conciencias that goes from 2018 and finish in 2020. And the idea here is to develop a platform that will have different parts and will be modular, and depending on the pathologies of the patient, we can use some of the parts. So here is a video that just shows the concept of what we want to develop, of the exoskeleton and the walker. So the first part is the exoskeleton, and there are several universities and companies working on the world in exoskeletons for gait functioning. So this exoskeleton has some similarities to that. It allows the movement in the sagittal plane from hip, knee, and ankle. But we have also some innovations that we have here in the lab, and one of them is the hip joint. We are developing a structure that will allow abduction-adduction in the joint, in the hip joint. Most of the commercial exoskeletons have this rigid and don't allow this movement, and we know in gait patterns, sometimes even if the range of motion is not very big, it's important for stability to have this ability of have abduction-adduction. So we are developing a variable stiffness system to improve this abduction. And also we are combining rigid robotics, that is this kind of robots with rigid parts and motors in the joints, with soft robotics. And soft robotics is a more bio-inspired solution, and this is Teflex that will be joined to the exoskeleton, And here the motors or the actuators don't go on the joint, like here, but they go on the segment, kind of the same position where our muscles are producing the force for the movement. And the transmission of the force is done by elastic elements, kind of simulating the tendons and the way they do it. So we are also combining these two kind of technologies in this project. So this is the hip and the system I was talking about of variable stiffness. And this is some of the studies we are doing with Exoskeleton, and that Miguel is doing this study. So the idea is here, first, before to use the exoskeleton for a gait, to use it for rehabilitation of the joint. So the idea is we are going to start a study where the therapist defines the range of motion he wants to apply to the patient and also the velocity in which the movement is developed. And then the exoskeleton reproduces this motion as many times as the therapist wants. So to avoid also the physical charge of the therapist doing this motion. And this is, as I was saying, the Teflex or the ankle orthosis that has the actuators in the place of the muscles and the elastic material doing the transfer of the force. And the idea here is not only to assist the person when he's doing the flexion, extension of the ankle, but also to help them improve the stiffness. We can increase the stiffness of the joint when the person is doing the step to increase the stability. And this is, I don't know if this works. Because we have this project with Conciencias, they have been very interested in what we are doing. So this is a video they done where we were testing the ankle orthosis in one patient. That was Fabian, that has a stroke 2 years ago, and he finished his rehabilitation process. He is able to walk, to talk, but he still has foot drop. And many times we see that even if the patient finished their rehabilitation process, they still have this problem, usually in the ankle and in the hand. So that's why we developed this ankle joint orthosis. So another part of this job, of this project, is to be able to control these devices. So we are using some system of control where we measure the movement with an IMU in the foot, and we can identify the different gait phases. This is very easy in a healthy patient. Oh, I'm so sorry. In a healthy patient, but it's harder in a patient that has foot drop and has developed different mechanisms to be able to walk. So we are using some advanced techniques of face detection with machine learning to improve this detection and be able to control the devices. And also we are working with some universities in Madrid and another research group in Spain, and they work in brain-computer interfaces with EEG, and they are controlling the device, the flexion and extension with cerebral signals. So trying to involve the nervous system in the control of the device. So the second part of this project, as I told, is a walker and exoskeleton. So this part is the smart walker. So the idea here is to have a rollator, a walker that has wheels, that is able to follow the movements of a person and also be conscious of their intention of the movement. So these are some strategies that we are working on right now. So this one is, oh, I'm so sorry. So this one, we use an industrial robot to simulate the walker, and in this industrial robot, we can put a lot of sensors to sense the environment, to do a map of the environment, and to be able to avoid obstacles that the person can encounter. Here the idea is that we have a system that can work in different ways. The system can go wherever the person wants, so it's only to take into account the intention of the movement of the person and move. Or the system can do navigation of its own. They can select the better route and take the patient there. Or it can be shared control. The system takes into account the movements of the intention of the movement of the person, but also is correcting the route if the person is going to a wall or to an object. And because we know that there are some persons that don't have enough upper limb control to use this kind of device, we are developing another kind of controls, and this is a project we did with a PhD student from Brazil, where with a camera, he's looking at the gaze of the person, and according to the direction of the gaze, the walker decides the direction of the movement. So one of the combinations of exoskeleton and walker that have been done before is the CP walker. This is a walker developed in Spain that is developed for children with cerebral palsy. And we have worked with them in the analysis of the signals they obtain for these children. And this is a project that they started in Spain, but right now they are building one in the Ability Lab in Chicago and one in Brazil. And we are starting to build one here also. The idea is to do a multicentric study and see if the good results they have been obtaining in Spain can be replicated in different centers. So we are taking this structure and adjusting to manufacture challenge we have here in Colombia, and seeing how can we reduce the cost and implement it here. So that was the first part of assistive robotics. This second part is robotics that are developed for affordable robotics for lower and medium income countries. And this was the project I was telling you about with hand prosthesis that is mechanical actuated, so only with the flexion of the elbow or the shoulder, the person is able to grab a ball or a glass or something like that. And the idea, as you see in the videos right here, was to develop some tutorials for the people to be able to do the prosthesis. And this was tested in rural area in India. So for this project, we were working with UCL, and taking into account this collaboration, we started a new project that started a few months ago. And the idea here is to do a hand prosthesis and also a hand exoskeleton using soft robotics. So using with what we have learned about the tendons and elastic actuators in the other projects to be able to use this in the hand. As I told you before, at the end of the rehabilitation process, most of the patients have still problems at the ankle and the hand. So that's why we are worried about this. And we have this new project funded by the Royal Academy of Engineering, and we are trying to look at soft materials like silicones and other materials and a different kind of actuation, like pneumatic actuation, to use it for exoskeletons and prostheses. So the first part was assistive robotics, so robots that are in physical contact with the person. And this second part is more about a human-robot interaction. So it's about the second line I told you about, where social robotics have more a cognitive interaction with the person and help them with cognitive process. So there are some studies that have shown that robotics can help not only physically to the persons, but also with cognitive process like attention or doing a shared goal, activities together. And also there are some studies that have shown the importance of embodiment. That means the difference between using a virtual agent in a tablet or a cell phone, and using a robot that has a physical body. And there are some studies that show this difference. So using this that is known about social robotics and humanoid robots, we develop different applications. So this one is the one I was talking to you about with the Locomat robot, where it's a gold standard for gait rehabilitation. Unfortunately, we don't have many of these, and it's very limited their use in Colombia. And here we see the application where the robot introduces himself. The robot is able to monitor some signs of the person. We have a heart rate monitor, and the robot can give feedback when the heart rate is too high. Also, the robot is asking the patient how they feel in terms of Borg scale of fatigue. And the main thing he does is the posture correction. So when the patient has a bad posture in the cervical spine or thoracic spine, the robot says, hey, you're looking down, please look back. And he does the gesture also for the to correct the patient. So for this, we have done, as I told you, we developed the tool. We have done the usability test and a short-term use. And we saw that with the use of the robot, the patient is a lot less time in a bad posture than when only the therapist is correcting the posture. And now we are doing a long-term trial, a long-term test, when we want to see if this is something that the patient can learn better when they have the robot than when they are only with the therapist. And this is our second application, that is cardiac rehabilitation. So in cardiac rehabilitation, the people, this is a busy service. We work with Fundación Cardio Infantil, that is one of the biggest clinics in cardiac rehabilitation in Colombia. And they have a service that has around 400 people per year. And they have groups each hour of between 15 and 20 patients that are assisted by a medical staff that goes from 2 to 7 people, depending on the day and the time. So sometimes, in the worst case scenario, there are 2 people from medical staff, one doctor in rehabilitation and one nurse, attending 20 persons doing the physical exercise. So again, we wanted to give them a tool to survey better the patients. So we have the patient that initially does a warm-up. There is a group warm-up and he's with the other patients, but then he starts the physical exercise in a treadmill. We put him a heart rate monitor because it's a very, very important risk factor in this kind of rehabilitation. We have a laser that is measuring parameters of the gait, an IMU that is measuring the inclination of the treadmill, and all this information is going to the robot. The robot communicates with the patient by speech, and the patient communicates with the robot by the tablet. The robot asks the patient every couple, like 3 or 4 minutes, how tired he feels. And the patient responds with a Borg scale, that is a measure that they use usually in the cardiac rehabilitation program. So the robot gives 3 kinds of feedback. One is encouragement, go, you are only starting, almost finishing, keep going. He gives a warning feedback when the patient answers with a high Borg scale, or when the measure of the heart rate is increasing. So he asks the patient, hey, how you feeling? Are you okay? And the patient can answer to the tablet, I'm okay, or I'm too tired, or I'm dizzy, or I'm in pain. In one of those cases, the robot goes to the final feedback, that is alert feedback, when he does call medical staff. Hey doctor, can you come here? So we are not taking any decisions, medical decisions. We are giving a tool to have continuous feedback on the patient. And in this project, we are working in other to be able to estimate other parameters. So we have a project with Kinect with a camera to estimate fatigue in anaerobic motion to see if we can predict this fatigue and avoid overtraining of the patients. And finally, Socialist Assistive Robotics in Autism is, when we started in social robotics, there are no evidence in other rehabilitation scenarios. We started putting social robots in rehabilitation scenarios because we thought that with the evidence found in autism or teaching, we could use it, but in those other cases, we didn't have much literature or background. But here in autism, there is a lot of studies that have shown that humanoid robots can help children with autism to improve social skills, communication skills, and also that maybe can assist with the diagnosis process. So one of the problems we have here in Colombia is that diagnosis of children with autism is done very late, and sometimes is not well done because it doesn't exist a real protocol to do this process. So we wanted to develop also tools not only for the therapy but to assist this diagnosis process. So children with autism have some problems with recognition of emotions, social skills, and communication skills, and also with joint attention. So one of the problems we found working with social robotics is that the humanoid robots, the commercial platforms that exist, they are costly and also they are fragile. So this is a case of a robot that was in cardiac rehabilitation. He talked too loud, he fell down and he beheaded himself, and it was a traumatic experience for the patient, for the student, for us, for everybody. And also the problem is there is no technical support for this kind of robots here in Colombia. We have to send the robot to Boston. Actually, we take it ourselves when we went there, and then bring it back, and maintenance was expensive. So with this kind of robots, it's very stiff and it's very fragile, and it doesn't support this interaction, and less with children. So that's where Project Castor was born. So the idea was to develop a robot that using co-creation design, so using the opinions of therapists, parents, and even the children that will use this robot in the future. And also the idea is to create a robot that will be hard to break, that will be less expensive, and also that we can give technical support here. So this is the team we are working in this project. We work with one university in England, with Plymouth University, with 2 professors there, and with one company in Medellin. So in the first part, we did observation. So we take one commercial platform, here is the Now, and one platform that is another robotic platform that was developed in Belgium, and that is an open access platform. So we download the design and we build it here. And we saw in this interaction, are 2 children with autism that are usually low, that have low functional skills. And we saw in these observations that the proprioception, body awareness, that the kid was imitating what the robot does, which is not typical of a kid with autism, that the kid was paying attention to the robot all the time he has with them. And also they did some talk abilities. The robot will say, "Hi, and now, what's your name?" And the kid will answer, which is also not very common. But also what we observe is that the therapist is super afraid of let the kid play with the robots. She's taking their hands all the time and not be able to have this physical interaction. And the therapists we work with, when they see these videos, they are very surprised about what these kids that they know and they have seen in therapy are doing in these cases. So we think that if the kid doesn't have this restriction of the therapist and is able to touch and interact physically with the robot, this would be a lot better for the improvement. So this is what we have done of Castor project. So for now, we are using kind of the same technology that we use in the Deflex, that's series elastic actuators. So we have motors that are connected with elastic segments, and this allows to have this kind of interaction and all kinds of interactions without causing any damages to the actuators we have. We are also working on the face of the robot, how the eyes will be. So for now, we have a mechanic skeleton that works, and we are working on the electronics of it. This is one part, is the interior and how it's going to function our robot. But another part is how it's going to look. So even the first part of which parts of the robot moves, we're taking from focal groups with therapists, parents, and kids. So for this second part, we want to know what they want for the exterior of the robot. So we have found some things here. This is something we are finishing right now. I can give you some of the conclusions I think we will going to have. And the problem is, parents and therapists think that the robot has to have a human face in order to do the connection. But kids think differently. Kids like dragons and things that are not real, that looks not real, that they cannot have in the real world. So we are trying to do a mean turn between these two opinions, and then at the end we will have a 3D version of the robot, but without the actuation, only the exterior to prove between the kids and the parents, and then we will have the robot, we hope, in the next 2 months, and then we have the end of the year to do some tests in the clinic. Another part of this project is to give objective tools to measure the attention of the kids. So we are working with a university in Brazil in this system that is a low-cost camera system that will allow us to measure the gaze of the kid, even if there is interaction with the parent or the robot, to have several cameras and be able to have always the direction of the gaze. This has shown in some studies in Brazil that makes a difference between what the therapist is able to see and what the system assures that is happening. So they did some studies with this robot. This is the owner robot that I told you before. And when the kid is interacting for the first time with the owner, the therapist thinks, the therapist says, oh, I think the children look at me, but I'm not sure. And we can say, yeah, when the robot starts talking, the children look at you, make eye contact for many seconds, and is an objective measure of joint attention and in general of the attention of the kid. So we want to also implement this in the clinic to give this objective measure to the therapist. So finally, we do these seminars for the projects we are developing. We have a seminar on October 4th. That is an international seminar on rehabilitation and assistive robotics, where we are going to show more detail in the last advancement of the exoskeleton and the walker and this part. And we have some guests from a professor from France, and also someone that works directly with Hocomat, the enterprise that does the Locomat, to have a more company view in this subject. And also we will have guests from Prótesis Avanzadas, that is a company in Medellin that does robotic prosthesis. And we find this very interesting because there is still people saying that in Colombia we cannot do technology, and this is kind of a success case. So we want to show to mainly to the students that we can do science and robotics in Colombia. So we hope you can come to this event. And I think that's it. Thank you. So if you have any questions.
¿Puedo preguntar en español?
Sí.
Pues primero, felicitarlos porque un trabajo muy valioso. Realmente encontrar en el ámbito, digamos, de tecnología que tengan en cuenta muchas cosas de lo que es el comportamiento motor y el comportamiento desde el desarrollo humano, pues es difícil. Quiero saber cómo hicieron el proceso o si tuvieron avales del comité de ética presentándolo como desarrollo tecnológico o como proyectos de salud.
Para los proyectos de Colciencias o en general.
En general.
Digamos que para los proyectos Colciencias son proyectos de salud, no de desarrollo tecnológico. Para desarrollo tecnológico piden que ya se tenga como el prototipo y que lo que estamos haciendo sea mejorar. Cuando nosotros empezamos estos proyectos, pues empezamos desde la observación, empezamos desde otros puntos de vista. Para comité de ética trabajamos con el comité de ética acá local de la escuela y con las clínicas asociadas. El proyecto Colciencias Agora, nosotros trabajamos con la Clínica Universidad de La Sabana y es a través de ellos que se hizo el comité de ética.
Okay. Bueno, lo preguntaba es porque nosotros estamos en un proceso similar y hemos tenido mucha dificultad en términos de avales de comité de ética, porque para nuestro país nos exigen que cuando estamos trabajando con tecnología hagamos primero pruebas con personas sanas antes de estar con personas directamente con la
Nosotros
patología.
todo empezamos con personas sanas.
O sea, siguieron el protocolo por salud. Okay.
Nosotros todo lo probamos primero con personas sanas. Digamos que lo único que no hemos hecho pruebas con personas sanas, pero puede que incluso las hagamos, es lo de robótica social. Pero como no es invasivo, pues no tiene ningún contacto físico con las personas. Pero incluso con el proyecto Castor puede que empecemos con niños neurotípicos para tener una línea base para comparar ya con los niños con autismo.
Muchas gracias.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Listo, gracias.
Thank you very much. We have still some minutes of the break, so if you want to take coffee. The speakers has more break in the cafeteria. Actually, it's my turn. I'm just kidding.
Que se hizo la prueba.
Hello. This is the ready.
Pero igual, yo le puedo dar una. Carlos, ¿tienes el
guys, welcome back. The next speaker is Ramon Sanchez. He's from BU and he is born and raised from Puerto Rico. Okay, so
Okay, cool. Yes. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ramon Sanchez. And I'm going to be talking about the design and development of the smart walker. So before I dive into my research, I'm going to be talking a little bit about who I am. So I'm from Puerto Rico, born and raised. I did my undergrad in Puerto Rico. So I went to the University of Puerto Rico where I did mechanical engineering. And after that, I went to Boston to do my PhD in mechanical engineering as well. In where I am now a PhD candidate. And my research focus is mostly on assistive robotics. So before going into my PhD during my undergrad, I did some research in biomems, which is electromechanical systems, and also assistive technologies. So basically, biomems, I work with a biosensor that detects nanoparticle of Ebola virus in blood samples. And in assistive technologies, so I did my capstone project in a small robot, which it was basically meant to feed people that couldn't move from the neck down. So it basically got the food in a spoon and put it in their mouth. And so after doing that project, I became really interested in assistive robotics. So now I'm working with smart walkers in BU. And well, since I'm from BU, a little bit about Boston University. So Boston University has about 18 colleges, among them the College of Engineering, of Rehab, communication, it has a med school, even law school. And having these many colleges is really useful because for collaboration, it makes it a lot easier. So for example, for us working with Professor Karen, it's a lot easier than having to go to all the universities and trying to make connections. So that's really good. And also some fun facts about BU is Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone while he was a professor at BU. And also that Martin Luther King earned his PhD in BU. And also that BU was the first university to award a PhD to a woman. So those are some fun facts for you guys. Okay. So now going a little bit more specific. So this is the lab where I work. So this lab is a joint lab. So we have 5 different groups from controls, ground robotics, aerial robotics, and my field, which is more on assistive robotics. So you can see that we have a big space over here that it's shared, so we all use it. And it has 50 motion capture cameras, really useful for ground robots, aerial robots, and in my case, for the small one, because I can capture the different movements of the different joints, and also measure all the different kinematics. And going a little bit more specific, this is the group that I'm a part of. It's a collaborative and integrated robotics group, which basically we create robotics to help improve the life of people, the quality of life, through assistive robotics. And these are some of the projects that we currently have. So we have shared control for share and rescue robotics. We also have control interfaces for in-home assistive robotics, and Shannon will be talking a little bit more about that. We also have assistive robotics for language learning. So we have a small robot that works in collaboration with a person, and then it kind of teaches the person how to learn a new language. And other than that, we have human-robot collaboration for manufacturing. So it's kind of how humans and robots can work together in an assembly line or manufacturing overall. And then we have micro, so the smart walker. And smart walker, a little bit of background on statistics in falls in the United States, so you kind of get a sense of why I'm doing this. So 1 in 4 adults over the age of 65, or 1 in 2 adults over the age of 85 fall each year in the United States, which translates to about $50 billion in healthcare expenses. And considering that, also considering the fact that the deaths caused by falls in people over 65 has increased from 2007 to 2016 by about 30%. And also considering that by 2050, the elderly population is projected to be about twice as much as it is today, falls in the elderly are a real problem that needs to be targeted. So for solving this problem, there's some things that are given to people so they can prevent falls or they can walk better. And so some of them are canes and walkers. And we're focusing a little bit more on walkers since there's more work done in terms of how to leverage these systems and apply more technology to it. So, so the walkers are basically like the second walking aid devices, like most used in the United States. It has like about 4.1 million users. This is about 2011, so now it should be like a lot more. However, even though when people use walkers, there's about like 43,000 falls reported. So 2006, this is like the only paper that kind of like mentioned that specific like fall related to the misuse of walkers, I should say. But like this number now should be a lot higher since like everything is increasing. And also this is only for misuses. So if you consider like the fact that people that fall that were given a walker is because they don't use a walker. So that number would be like a lot higher if you also consider that population. And also even though walkers are common walking aid, there's no proof that just giving a walker to a person will prevent them from falling. So there's been some work done to trying to like bridge this gap between like people giving a walker and people falling, or people not using the walker. So some of these research has been on robotic walkers and small walkers. There's not necessarily like a distinction between these two. They could both be into like robotic walkers, small walkers. But it made the distinction because robotic walkers would be more of a system that monitors the user's state and prevents falls by providing active feedback. And you can think of like active feedback as like actuating the wheels of the robot, of the walker, to like drive the user to a more stable position. And this is mostly used by people that can't walk without it. So people that were like on a wheelchair and they like start to like walk, then they would use like this type of system. You provide more support to them. And also like another system is like the small walkers. So the small walkers, they monitor the state of the user and then they prevent falls by providing passive feedback. So in this case, like the system that are done already, they usually just use brakes or like alarms or stuff like that. Like if the user is in risk of falling, they can provide an alarm or usually just brakes. And this is used for people that have better strolling control. So people that can walk better. They're not like wheelchair bound. They're already using a walker, but they're like just they're about to be given like a walker, and you can use like this type of system, and they can work with a physical therapist so they learn how to use it. So, however, like this system, they usually target like one specific thing. So, for example, like this one has like 4 sensors in the handles, and that's it. It's basically to like assess the amount of force that you put into the walker, or like how you're turning and stuff like that. But not necessarily like it doesn't provide like feedback to the user. So the user don't really know like how they're doing, how they're using the walker. Same for this type of system. So they have a lot of perception. So they have a lot of sensors that you can get data, and you can then analyze it and be like, okay, the user is doing this wrong, but there's no like feedback. Like the user is not necessarily on the loop when they're using the walkers. So maybe afterwards the health professional can look at the data and be like, okay, this is what you should improve. But they don't really know like in real time. Basically what we want to do is create a system that prevents falls through a combination of like multiple different methodologies. So we have a model of small walker. So what is a model of small walker? So we have a normal walker. This is like a 2-wheel walker that you can buy anywhere. And like everything that we're doing, we can just mount it in it. So any small walk, any 2-wheel walker, we can just put these modules, the handles, everything, and it should work. I mean, some calibration, but then it should work. So we have reassessment and mitigation. So what does that mean? So in reassessment and mitigation, we want to use the sensors that we have on board the walker to like sense, to at least like see how the user is using the walker and detect any misuses, and then let the user know as well. So that would be on the mitigation part. So on the mitigation part, as you can see over there, it says like we have haptic feedback. Not necessarily haptic feedback, it could be visual feedback or auditory feedback. But the point of this is like we detect that the user is using it wrong. It could be by the handles, like you're putting too much force, you're lifting the walker, you're turning too fast, or things like that. Or also you're like close to like an obstacle if you see it from the other sensor. And then we can provide some feedback to the user. So right now we have different motors in the handles, and we can vibrate them, provide different patterns, and then the user would know, okay, this is what I'm doing wrong, and they know in real time. So the hope is that the user would learn how to use it properly over time. And then we have home environmental assessment. So this is basically using the walker, putting them in the user's home, creating a map, and then putting like marks of where the user is misusing the walker. So then we can maybe work with occupational therapists or physical therapists. They can go to their home and be like, okay, like this area is dangerous, in this area you're having more problems, and we can like solve those problems. And then an exercise plan, we're not working on that yet, but it's like I'm trying to use like maybe like the screen to like encourage the user to use the walker more often. So this is like a breakdown of the cost of the walker. So the whole purpose of this is creating a low-cost walker. So as you saw on the on the picture of the robotic walker, it is a very expensive system. Like just the force sensors that they use is like 3-axis force sensors, and it costs like each one of the sensors has two. It's like $6,000. Whereas in this case, we're trying to create an analog system using like the handles, which is 3D printed, like redesigned, and we're using one-dimensional sensor to kind of like get an analogous of the three-axis force sensors. So about the modules, like how are we getting all this data from the user? So the handles. So in the handles we have like perception. Perception is just like the sensors. So this part we don't really have anything like telling the user how they're doing. This is just like how do we get the data from the user? How do we get the interactions between the user and the walker? So we have 10 sensors. So we have 2 handles. In each handle we have 5 sensors. So every handle we have in the periphery of the handle. So around the handle we have 3 sensors. So basically placed on like where the user would put the more force or the more pressure. And then we also have sensors in the edges of the handles. So that's so we can basically tell us when the user is like turning, and we can get the intention of the user. So if we're doing like navigation and the user want to turn like left or right, we can determine that based on the readings from these local sensors. And this is like basically like how we're doing, how is it like arranging the handle itself. So we have, this would be like the handle, then we have like the sensors, and we have like a button that serves as this like it like transmits the forces from the user to the to the system itself. And also we're using the data from these handles to classify the use of the walker. As I said, like putting too much force, or also we're doing like some specific classification of sit-to-stand transitions, which I'll mention later. And the lidar, so this is basically to get gait parameters such as cadence, step length, gait symmetry, and speed of the user. This is how the data looks, so you can see like each leg and then the center of the user, center of mass. And also used to implement simultaneous localization and mapping on the user environment. So basically like creating a map and localizing the user within the map. So this is like a work in progress, so yeah, the map is kind of fuzzy, but this is like the beginning. Also, we're using a heart rate sensor, basically to continuously monitor the health of the user, and also to like assess if a task is like hard or difficult for the user. For example, if there's like a ramp or something like that, we can also use that in the map and point it. So now to the feedback models. So like these, the visual and auditory feedback, they're not done yet, but we want to implement them to the walker as well. Basically, the visual system, we have a screen. So this part is done. We only use it to like run programs and stuff like that. But we can also use it to provide some visual feedback to the user. And also we can have visual feedback in the sense of LED lights. So we can flash the lights depending on how the user is misusing the walker, or depending like if you want the user to go right, left or right, we can also like kind of have something for that. And auditory feedback would be basically using speakers on in-ear devices to let the user know how they're using the device. So this is mostly like a work in progress, but this is kind of like the goal. We want to have a system that has visual, auditory, and haptics. So depending on the user's capabilities, we can use one of these, or maybe all of them. So this is what I've been working on mostly for like the feedback. So it will be haptic feedback. So haptic is to the sense of touch. So basically we have the handles, we have the sensors in the periphery, 1, 2, and 3. Like I mentioned, like briefly on the handles to get the interactions between the user and the walker, and also on the edges. So this is for the intention of the user. And like all RA, linear resonance actuators, those are the vibration motors, basically. So we have 3 of them in each handle. And basically, the goal of this type of handles is like, if we detect a misuse, we can provide some specific pattern of vibrations through some of the motors, or all the motors at the same time. And then over time, the person can learn, okay, this pattern means this type of misuse, and I have to correct it. Otherwise, it just keeps going on. And we have another haptic feedback. So this would be skin stretch. So skin stretch, like basically this white strip of 3D printed material basically would like rotate against your skin, like making it like to stretch a little bit. Basically, you can feel it. So this is like depending on the capabilities of the user. If they don't have that much sensitivity to like vibrations, maybe this type of haptic feedback would be better. So we haven't tested like none of them, and the goal for this summer would be to create a study where we test this, we also test the other one, and we can basically pick one to see which one will be better. So for reassessment, assessment, and mitigation, so identification of walker misuse. So in this case, this is like a simple case that we kind of like analyze as a proof of concept that we can classify the use using local sensors on board the walker. So for this, we're trying to classify correct standing and incorrect standing based on the readings just from the handles, just from the locals and sensors on the handles. And this is we define this as incorrect because when you're standing, if you hold on to the walker, you might fall forward. So we want to like prevent this, and we want to see if we can actually get that. Classified. So this is how the data. So this would be correct transition, incorrect transition of one user, and correct transition, incorrect transition of another user. As you can see, it's kind of messy, and you can't really tell like which one's which. So just by looking at it, it's kind of messy. So we decided to use a machine learning algorithm called hidden Markov model, in where we basically trained two models. One that was trained with the data from the incorrect standing, and the other one was fed with the data from the correct standing. And based on that, we got two different models, one for correct, one for incorrect. And with this, what we did after we get the models trained, we fed it with new data. So we fed it with new data, and then it will be, depending on the score of both models, the higher score will be the highest probability of it. So, for example, if it has a higher score on the correct one, then that transition is more probable to be a correct transition. So we classify it as correct, same for incorrect. So that's basically what we did. Then, so we trained the model with just one subject data. We got that accuracy, then we trained it with another one, and then we combined both, and it was better. However, I can't really say that we can generalize and that we can just use a lot of users' data to train the model, because it's just two users, and there can be overfitting, and we're not entirely sure about that. So we're gonna also do a study this summer when we can actually do that with actual patients, and we can say that for sure if that's the case, or if we have to like build models first, like every user. Like if we could generalize, that would be a lot better, because then we will have a more robust data set. So also we wanted to see if we could get the gait parameters from onboard sensors, from the low-cost onboard sensors. So there's been some work on that. There's been in the literature. Some people have been able to do it, but they're using expensive sensors. So either the 4-storage sensors, the 3-axis one. So we wanted to see if we could do that using the local sensor. Same like the handles, and also like the LiDAR for detecting the position of each leg. So this is basically what we did using the motion capture system that we have to like see like the gait. And then what we did is like trying to compare it with the data from all LiDAR. And this is just so you guys have an idea of like how the data or LiDAR looks versus an expensive LiDAR. So this is like almost continuous, but this is like a lot of dots, and we have to like do a lot of post-processing to like detect like where each leg is, and so it's a lot more messier. And then when we compare it, like this is like the gait versus the gait from the LiDAR, you can see some patterns, but it's not exactly like quite what we would expect. But this data, this is just we run it through one algorithm, and then we got it. So there's no processing. So maybe if we do some processing to like this data itself, we could get better results. But that's it. We're working on it, because like we've been mostly focusing on the haptic feedback. But this would be something that now we're gonna work more, and maybe we can even apply some machine learning algorithms to better detect the position of each leg using this data that is kind of sparse. And also like the environmental and home assessment. So basically the goal of this was to create a map of the user's environment and do like a spatial temporal map. So what does that mean? So basically having a map of the user's environment, localizing the user within the map, and also like whenever there is a misuse, we can tag it in the map. So if there's a misuse here, we tag it, and then we say, okay, what type of misuse and when did it happen? And the goal would be to have like a map, give this to like a health professional, they can look at it, and they can see like where is the user having problems in their house. So can it be in the kitchen or in other places? So this is like as a proof of concept, we only did too much force on lifting, but we should be able to like do a lot more type of misuses. And as future works, so for risk assessment mitigation, but not just do like sit to standing, but also like Like are you like how is the weight shift, the gait symmetry? So adding a lot more features to it. Like the C2 stand was just like a proof of concept, but being able to like make a more robust system. Home and environmental assessment. And for that, well, actually creating the environmental, the spatial depth map. Right now we have like the map, we get the type of issues, but we have to like combine both. The exercise, have like an exercise plan in where the user can work basically with the walker can work with the user and encourage them to like work out, to use the walker more often. And the haptic feedback will basically like match the reassessment with the haptic feedback, so you can get the feedback in real time. Social feedback to encourage the user, not only through exercise, but also like talking to the user or having messages, positive messages on the screen, in where we can say like, oh, you're doing good, or you can do better, but not just say all the time, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, because then they might be like, well, I'm not going to use this, because it's always telling me that I'm doing it wrong. I don't want that. And then system validation, of course, we're planning like in the study that I just said, in where we want to test the handles to see if the haptic signals are salient enough for the elderly community, and also like to see if we can actually get the gait parameters or those gait canons and everything from the sensor that we have for it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for sharing your research with us, and I'm curious to know have you considered a way of measuring how, or if the feedback through the screen could be distracting
Yes.
to the patient, and
Yes.
how to handle that?
Yeah. So actually, one of my collaborators in Boston brought that one up. So that's why we haven't like worked on it, because that one is like the easiest one to set, because we can just have like messages. But then that's like something that we have to take in consideration. So something that I was thinking is maybe just use it like when the user is not moving. So if the user is walking, we don't use it. But we can have the visual and the haptic feedback. So for example, we want to show a message, so we can have some specific haptic feedback. The user knows that he has to stop, and then he can look down. Because otherwise, if he's looking down while walking, then definitely that's like adding another risk of falling, which we don't want. Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you guys. Our next speaker is the first student of Boston that is going to present something of her development in here. So please give her a welcome.
You want to take a picture for Rebecca? Yeah. Okay. Try to keep Rebecca feeling like she's here. Sending lots of
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I've been sending her over and over again.
I think she's a little sad.
I haven't heard a word from her.
So, no, she asked me if we could meet yesterday, as usual, and I told her that maybe tomorrow. So I think we are meeting with her tomorrow. And I do think she's not very happy with me.
Do you need help? No.
I've got a nap also.
It's not getting the message here.
What happened?
It's not getting the message to go to the screen.
Strings.
He's transferring the. Do you want my members to hear No. Come here. Okay. Come sit on my series. No,
Where Sergio go?
He went to do something. He went to try and fix it. Oh, we're moving everything on to the, memory stick. Just the memory stick. I did. Just do the date. You do date, you'll probably see the most.
I'm not working then for your computer.
Okay. Then I get our memory stick. Just include this. Did you put on? Where'd you go? I put on the memory stick. Okay, so we're in here. This is good. You guys.
But I don't know if the computer is working.
Okay, this, we don't have a memory store now. Okay, so it's on a memory stick. This will work on that.
El código para graficar el video, pues al final, de compararlo con el código, si eso tenga pasos positivos y eso. Que por eso ya el código como tal, pues, funciona con los tiempos, pues allá, en el modelo, que funciona un modelo de cada paso. Y luego pues se tocaría, yo comparé con dos, tú comparas con todos los que ponen. Eso es.
No, it should be at the top.
Con la librería que usamos, como que falla un montón. Yo la verdad que es nervioso en ustedes.
So just drag it down to the desktop. And then percentage.
It will detect
Okay, perfect. This does this. No, that's not, it's not. That's okay. Okay. Oh, he has something.
Ya, listo. Gracias.
La que había. No hay muchas, había como 200.
Just look close Sí lo tiene.
All done.
Didn't hurt.
name's Shannon, and I'm going to be talking about robotic walkers and how engineering design can facilitate real-world usability. So first I'm going to go over a little bit of my background, and then I'm going to talk about some of my previous research, and then the research that I'm doing here. So I grew up in California, near San Francisco, which is the star that you can see on the map, and I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad. I graduated in May 2017, and I studied environmental science. Environmental science is like the study of chemistry, biology, physics, and also some like social science stuff. And then after that, I went to Boston University, and I'm expected to graduate in May of 2020. And then I'm studying mechanical engineering, and I'm doing this program called Lane Entry Accelerated Program. And that program is designed specifically for people who didn't do engineering in undergrad. So you take a year of undergrad classes, and then you are accepted into the regular master's program. So right now, I just finished my undergrad classes, and I'll be starting the master's program in the fall. And then one of my goals with doing this program is to integrate robotics with environmental science. So some previous research that I did a senior thesis, and it focused on developing a low-cost air pollutant sensor. This specific air pollutant causes cancer and various lung diseases. The goal of the study was to deploy a network of 100 sensors in a local hotspot. And we were doing that to gain highly localized data about the concentration gradients of air pollutant. Something that was special about this study was that the instruments that we used cost about $400 as compared to $25,000 for the commercially available devices. And doing this project is kind of what got me into engineering and inspired me to apply to this program. So at BU, I'm working in 2 different research labs, and the first one focuses on self-cleaning solar panel research. As a little bit of background, dust buildup on solar panels is a really big problem because it decreases the usable area of the solar panels. And this is a really big problem in dry and arid places, which are primed for solar panel usage. And so to combat that, we're studying electrodynamic screens, which charge dust particles and then expel these dust particles off of the solar panels. For this project, I was a part of the mechanical team. So we designed this field test structure here, and we sourced all of the materials, and then we also designed the electronics box and sourced all of the electronics and designed all the wiring and stuff, which is way more difficult than you would expect. The other lab that I work at BU is Rebecca Kirsch's lab, and it focuses on low-cost assistive robotics. So retrieving fallen objects is really difficult for people with mobility impairment. So the robot that we're designing is based off of this robot that they designed at Georgia Tech, right up here. And they used the iRobot's Create as a platform to build off of. And the way that this robot works is that you direct it towards a fallen object, and then it goes over there and sweeps it up and brings it back to the user. So we're researching control mechanisms and improving the retrieval process for this robot. So this is what I'm doing here, and I'm working on making the walker more adaptable so more people can use it. And this is important because it's designed for people with strokes, but people with strokes present their impairments in different ways, so it's important to have a walker that can be adjusted to each person's individual needs. And so what I did specifically was design these 2 things, and this one makes it so that you can hold the handle at any angle of the wrist, and then this one is for making the height of the walker adjustable so that people can use it, people of different heights can use it. And so this one would be installed right here, and this one would be installed here. So this is just a picture of how the handle would, or the device would be installed on the handle. And these are all the pieces of the device that I made. So for the way that you assemble it is that you put this piece into this piece, and they're 2 separate pieces because it's better to 3D print them that way, they turn out better. And then from there, you insert this piece into this other piece, and if you twisted it and lined up the pegs at a different angle, then it would be a different angle this way for the wrist. And then here, you put this top piece over this piece over here. And then you also align the pegs here so that you can have a different angle of the wrist in this direction. And then here's just the fully assembled thing with the peg like inserted into this hole. And then here are examples of different angles that you can hold it at. And then that's just the same thing again, just to show you what it looks like. And in conclusion, adaptable design increases the impact of the walker so that the same design can be used for multiple people. And yes, this is me falling on a walker the other day. So the whole point of this is to okay. No, I didn't. We were walking and I fell. Yes. Okay.
That's not our walker. Our
No,
walker
that was,
is
it
not
wasn't
that.
a walker, it was a normal walker.
We're putting out a disclaimer and I will put it on Facebook. Or Twitter. Great job. Humor is always good.
What?
Humor is always good.
I can't.
Okay, guys.
Put it in.
The next speaker is Felipe Vallen. He is mechanical engineer. He will be presenting the design of the smart walker of the 100 kg charge.
No, pero terminar ya con el partido.
Okay, good morning everybody. I will talk about a little bit about my work related to the Agora lower limb Exoskeleton and my work that I did in Boston with Roman. So at first, as Marcela showed us, the Agora project is like a big platform that it is like first of all a walker that is a social work. Then the lower limb exoskeleton that has actuation in hip, ankle, and knee. So our approach to that exoskeleton at first was with the 3 joints active, but we have a problem because the ankle need a lot of degrees of freedom to allow that better gait, a natural gait. So we started working just like the hip and the knee modules. And then like we started developing the ankle orthosis that is called reflex. I will talk about a little bit about the mechanics, and then in another presentation, Daniel will talk about more about the electronics and the control of this device. So, so my work in here is related to understand how this hip joint, the exoskeleton hip joint works. So for a little bit of context, this hip has different ways to adjust the exoskeleton to the subject or the patient. So we have like this. We can allow this movement for adapt the exoskeleton to a different hip length, and we have like a modal links to allow that movement, because this mechanism here is connected to this one. So if when we adjust this one for for a fat patient, for example, we need to adjust these links. So one of my works in here is to understand that that behavior, because in this system it's like a variable stiffness system. So we need to understand how we can like be more rigid the system. For instance, if I have a natural gait, right? I need to allow this movement to a better natural gait. But with a patient that doesn't have control or stability in his or her trunk, this system will be like more. We need that be more stiff. Like this system will have like more stiffer, right? So I have to understand better the interaction between the hip joint of the exoskeleton and the hip of the patient. Then the next work is about the ergonomic feature of the system that we have already, because the first version of the first prototype of those system has a lot of problems, because they have a lot of relative motion because of the movement of the patient and the exoskeleton. So my work is to, using 3D printing technology, create this kind of fixtures that is like inside of the exoskeleton, and then you can like fixture to the limb using a composite material with PLA and carbon fiber. So this is another part. As I told you, I would like only talking about the mechanics. So we have like some motors in here. This is the bispecific tendons, but they are connected to the shoe of the patient. So in here the idea is to like do some assistive motion to the patient during the gait, or like that, just a therapy. So my work in here is basically to build and design all the fixture, all the support systems. This is like a previous version. This version was like only fixed in the hip, but we noticed that if we start to move, I don't know what, the left part of the patient, the subject will be like super tight in the other side. So we need to compensate the forces. So we need this. So in this version, we like build the rest of the support system to the shoulders to enhance the posture and like to transfer more the forces to the patient. There are some example that is like one of the versions that there is in Spain right now. Like all the, like an example of a related to actuation. We can see that they have like the actuation of this system is just like an IMU here, the tip of the shoe, and turn out the device according to the face gate that the patient is working. So more about my work of Boston is to, first of all, to build the walker, like the structure. So we have like pipe, aluminum pipe, and 3D printed joints. So the idea is that all these joints that you see over here is 3D printed, so it's super easy, because if you have like 3D printer in your house, or I don't know, in your office, you can do this. And the other part is like aluminum pipe that's easy to find out. We have a problem in Boston because these specs are difficult, because it's not difficult, like the the wall thickness that can like interfere with related to the weight, because if we have a thicker wall, it will be like more heavier. But if we have an thinner wall, it will be like light, but it is like dangerous that the person like can fall or I don't know, break the structure. So one of my works is related to Ramon's work, that the technology that he developed. The idea is that to apply it to the armrest and the hand. So we did some configurations that we have like the sensors in here, like to direct it to the forearm, and then like in another part we put another 4 sensors, like to try to simulate the expensive ones, because that sensors are super expensive. So the idea is when we have like that walker, I don't know, in a rural park or in, I don't know, in a house, if something breaks, it will be cost a lot of money. So the idea is to design something cheaper. So basically, it's the same principle of Ramon's design, but we apply it to this one. So I did some tests, like trying to push forward. There's like one table with one arm, and try like do some movements if I want to turn left or right. And we have like pretty good results, but we have like to improve some design aspects. So that's what I told you, that future works is to improve the local sensor design and try to compare those systems, but like in a more, I don't know, if you can do it in the walker would be great, or just like in a table and simulate that motions. And that's it. Okay, any questions? We are going now to the lunch break, I think. So yeah, you will like be back here in an hour, I think, 1.5 hours.
¿Son las 1 o las 2?